You beautiful bastards, hope you're having a fantastic Thursday. On that note, I am having a great one considering today is the first day I can keep something down other than crackers. I'm a huge fan of that. It's funny how a few garbage days will just make you appreciate the normal. With that said, buckle up. Definitely hit that like button, otherwise I'm gonna throat punch you now that I have my energy back, and let's just jump into it. And the first things we're gonna talk about today, let's knock out some quickie stories that have been going around. One of my favorite non-stories, especially because of the headline, is Bella Hadid is the most beautiful woman in the world according to science. Which I will say, if you have to say science, it doesn't feel like science. The people listening to the podcast version of the show are very confused. I just used air quotes. But yeah, seemingly a number of the reports on this link back to the Daily Mail, which is of course the most trustworthy and legitimate of news sources. And it appears to be connected to something called the golden ratio of Beauty Phi, references the Greeks' idea of perfection. And for their top 5, they have Bella Hadid, then Beyonce, and Amber Heard, followed by Ariana Grande, and then Taylor Swift. Which really, if you think about it, was just their way of using science, air quotes, as a way to make a top 10 hottest celebrities list without it being kind of sexist. Then you had the story going around that Kim Kardashian was offered $1 million to use likeness for virtual sex, which, just to clear the air on this, if you ever see a story like this, things like this, they're bullshit and they're orchestrated PR efforts. The company that's offering this is currently fundraising their project, right? And so it's trying to capitalize on the name value of someone who in the past is one of the most notable sex tapes of all time, who would obviously not accept this deal. I mean, she's got, an estimated net worth of $350 million, and if she wanted to make a whole $1 million, she could do it in 1 or 2 Instagram posts. Then, in another quickie, it's that time of year again. Streamy nominations have been announced. This year, it's gonna be the 9th one. It's one of the biggest internet award shows. We ended up actually being nominated for both Audience Show of the Year as well as News, which I will say thank you, but also I will say having an internet award show, I feel like it's kind of hard in general because there are so many massive people online that you've never heard about. Right, for example, there are times on this show where I'll cover someone that has like 20 times the audience that we have on this show. And around like 80% of the audience is like, who's that? But also, and I'm probably fucking myself by noting this, it is odd to me that you can have something like Audience Creator of the Year and you can have someone on there like a Tana Mojo, but no PewDiePie, or hell, a Shane Dawson for that matter. Right, one coming off a historic year, over 100 million subscribers, the other seemingly part of this massive YouTube change. And so yeah, I really don't know how to feel about it. Also, in quickies, we got new Juul news. Of course, over this past year, there's been this big focus on the e-cigarette market, and since Juul owns such a massive part of that market, there's been increased focus on them. There's been huge criticism around their advertising practices, which, as we covered, they recently suspended all broadcast, print, and digital advertising in the United States. But there was also an increased focus on their flavors, with many critics saying that their flavored products were targeted towards teens, or at the very least, contributed to the massive spike in teen vaping. You know, regarding those flavored products, last year we saw them remove all fruity flavors from retail shops. Then, more recently this year, in September, there were reports that the Trump administration might ban flavored e-cigarettes. And the news we're seeing today is that Juul has announced that they will stop selling fruity flavored e-cigarette cartridges online for US customers, with those customers now only able to purchase tobacco, mint, and menthol flavors. And with this, we had Juul's new CEO saying, "We must reset the vapor category by earning the trust of society and working cooperatively with regulators, policymakers, and stakeholders to combat underage use while providing an alternative to adult smokers." Which, on that note, on the other side of this, you had the American Vaping Association calling this a cowardly, self-serving move, saying that this is Juul saying to their ex-smoker customers, "Drop dead," with AVA President Gregory Conley saying, "There is a reason many adults aged 21 and over went through the hassle of purchasing flavored pods from Juul's website. Flavors are critical to helping adult smokers quit, and many ex-smokers get attached to particular flavors. While we hope that Juul users will visit their local vape shop to find an alternative, this doesn't change the fact that some ex-smokers will likely respond to this by choosing to return to combustible cigarettes. We are sure Altria, which owns 35% of Juul, will be pleased with any bump in Marlboro sales that follows this announcement," and adding that this move will only open them up to questions about why they are continuing to sell mint, which is their most popular flavor with both youth and adults by virtue of it being the only non-tobacco Juul flavor available at retail aside from menthol. And yeah, around this story, I'm really fascinated to know what you think. I personally have no experience with nicotine, thus no experience trying to quit. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's good, it's bad, it's not gonna do anything? Let me know what you're thinking in those comments down below. But from that, I wanna share some stuff I love today, and Today in Awesome brought to you by SeatGeek. And SeatGeek, if you don't know, is the fantastic ticket app that takes the confusion out of buying tickets to all kinds of live events, from concerts to comedy shows to sporting events. They put all the tickets in one place, they give them a 0 to 100 score so you know if you're getting a good deal or not. I've got the app on my phone and it is by far the easiest way to shop for tickets to whatever. You know, something weeks or months away, covered. Last minute date idea or present, boom. You know, not to get too deep in this sponsor copy, but if life is a collection of experiences, you might as well have some cool, unique ones. And so, hey, if you're looking to catch a game, go to a concert, a comedy show, maybe watch some Broadway, just go to SeatGeekPhil.com, and best of all, for you beautiful bastards, you get $20 off your first ticket purchase if you use code PHIL. So go to SeatGeekPhil.com or just click that link in the description, download the app, remember the code, and save. And the first bit of awesome is if after today's show you want more news, you want a new deep dive, today we also put out a deep dive on federally unrecognized tribes. It's really interesting and I recommend you check it out. Then we got the official trailer for American Son with Kerry Washington. We got the How It Should Have Ended for It Chapter 2. We had Liza Koshy putting her dollar store taste to the test. We had the fantastic Paul Rudd on Hot Ones. We had Nikki Glazer hijacking a stranger's phone. Ryan Reynolds gave us a Deadpool makeup tutorial. We had Gordon Ramsay surprising a young fan. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then, as you may have realized, thanks to memes and or extremely stressed out teenagers, it is PSAT season. Right, something that people say is a great primer for the SAT and even the ACT. And actually, regarding the ACT, we have a story about a woman by the name of Marjorie Clapper. And Marjorie is in the news because she reportedly paid $15,000 to cheat on her son's ACT, with prosecutors saying that she made out this $15,000 payment to a fake charity that the scam's mastermind, William Rick Singer, created called Key Worldwide Foundation, with Singer then paying a proctor to correct her son's test, which resulted in him scoring a 30 out of 36. And reportedly Clapper agreed with Singer to lie about her son's background by saying that he was African American and of Hispanic Latino origin. And also, if that wasn't enough, she also said that he was a first-generation college student, even though both of his parents had actually graduated from college. Right, and so Clapper ends up pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud back in May. And the reason we're talking about her now is her sentencing. Prosecutors had pushed that she be sentenced to 4 months in prison and fined $20,000, while her attorneys pushed for no jail time, instead asking for 1 year of supervised release, including 4 months of home confinement, 300 hours of community service, and a $20,000 fine. And the judge ended up hitting Clapper with a 3-week prison sentence, 1 year of supervised release, 250 hours of community service, and a $9,500 fine. And the sentencing here, I mean, a lot of people had issue with this. For example, U.S. Attorney Andrew E. Lelling said that he disagreed with the 3-week sentence given Clapper's bribe and her false claims about her son's background, saying Miss Clapper thereby not only corrupted the standardized testing system, but also specifically victimized the real minority applicants already fighting for admission to elite schools. Meanwhile, Clapper's defense team argued that she was motivated by what they called her child's legitimate and documented disadvantages, as well as a recent violent assault, saying that Clapper chose to doctor his exams because she, quote, wanted him to feel like a regular student. Her attorney writing Mrs. Clapper's motives were maternal, but her execution misguided and illegal. And also following this, we saw a number of people online criticizing this sentencing, calling it leniency towards white or wealthy parents. You know, we've kind of seen similar reaction surfacing when we saw Felicity Huffman handed her 14-day sentence back in September for that case, or with people pointing to situations like that of Tanya McDowell, who is a Connecticut woman who was sentenced to 5 years in prison for lying about her address to get her son into a better school district. Reportedly at the time, she was homeless and living out of her van, shelters, and an apartment she only had access to at night. Others pointing to the case of Kelly Williams-Villar in Ohio, where she used her father's address to get her children into a better school district. She was initially handed 2 concurrent 5-year sentences, though she was later able to reduce that to just 10 days. But yeah, ultimately, that's where we are with this. It's been very interesting to see kind of the reaction and sentencing, with Clapper being now the 9th parent to be sentenced from that huge college admissions scandal. And yeah, around this, I'd love to know your feelings on this. Do you feel like people are being held accountable, or no, these sentences, you view them as light and kind of just an extension of the wealthy feeling like they can do whatever because they're just treated different even when they get caught? Then in international news, we had an update around Turkey and Syria. We've been covering this story for a little while now. It was our main final story yesterday. And the update today is that there is a ceasefire that is also not a ceasefire. And I'll try to unpack that confusing sentence. Today, we saw U.S. Vice President Mike Pence say
that today the United States and Turkey have agreed to a ceasefire in Syria. The Turkish side will pause Operation Peace Spring in order to allow for the withdrawal of YPG forces from the safe zone for 120 hours. All military operations under Operation Peace Spring will be paused, and Operation Peace Spring will be halted entirely on completion of the withdrawal.
Also, reportedly as part of the deal, Pence said that the United States would not implement any more sanctions on Turkey and that it would revoke all economic punishments once a permanent ceasefire takes effect. Pence also reportedly saying that Turkey agreed to recommit to countering ISIS and to cooperate with the United States on securing ISIS detainees and guarding prison camps in Syria. Right, so there's that. But the reason this has been referred to as not a ceasefire, well, it's for 2 reasons. One, as Axios explains, the agreement just gives Turkey what it wants: the removal of sanctions and support for a, quote, safe zone free of YPG forces that they view as an extension of a group they consider terrorists. Right, so you have people saying that Turkey started the operation in the first place to clear the YPG from the region, and so really this is just a retreat window for allies the United States had previously unexpectedly abandoned. Right, even with this, reportedly hundreds of Kurds have been killed, thousands have been displaced, and at least 1,000 ISIS prisoners and supporters have escaped prison camps. And the second reason that people are saying that this is not a ceasefire is that Turkey's foreign minister literally said, "This is not a ceasefire. We will pause the operation for 120 hours in order for the terrorists to leave. We will only stop the operation if our conditions are met." And adding, as a result of our president's skillful leadership, we got what we wanted. Also, something else we're seeing reported, in Pence's announcement, he specifically says that Turkey agreed to not take action against Kobani, but on the other side of that, the Turkish foreign minister denied that they agreed to that. And so, just some notable discrepancies in a situation that it's hard to argue that the Trump administration created by unexpectedly abandoning an ally, that the president is now trying to tout as a win by getting a ceasefire that once again is also not a ceasefire apparently. It seemingly gives the Turkish president everything that he wanted. So yeah. And then let's talk about the big updates around Brexit. One, because it's interesting and important, and also two, the only way I can feel a sense of normalcy these days is to look at others' chaos. And the big news and update around this is that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has agreed to a new deal with the European Union, and this has been a long time coming. We saw Johnson saying that he would negotiate a better deal than the EU offered the last Prime Minister Theresa May, but also at the same time you had the EU saying that they wouldn't negotiate a different deal. And all of that happened, among other things, as Johnson lost his majority in Parliament, he was kicking out members of his own party, and as Parliament voted to prevent him from leaving the EU without a deal, which notably removing the United Kingdom from the EU had been one of Johnson's major promises, and he originally said that this would happen by the current October 31st deadline with or without a deal. Okay, but now that there is a proposed deal, let's take a look at some of its key differences from May's deal. First, this deal scraps the Irish backstop, which has been a massively contentious issue. And for a little oversimplified context, the United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And specifically here, we're looking at Northern Ireland because it's on the same island as the independent Republic of Ireland. And right now, there is no hard border between those two countries, meaning that there are no custom checks for goods crossing between the border. And under May's deal, that soft border would have remained. But this was actually one of the big reasons that our deal failed 3 times in Parliament, because members of Parliament believed that this would have essentially kept the UK in the EU. Secondly, this deal would reportedly create a new Northern Ireland-only backstop, which may sound confusing because, as we said, Northern Ireland is part of the UK, right? But basically, the idea is that this would set up a special arrangement where Northern Ireland would still remain subject to certain EU regulations, those including agriculture, value-added tax on goods, excise duties, and state aid rules. And that, in turn, would prevent a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. But it would also result in a new border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, which means there would be custom checks and different regulations between the two, meaning some new big trade costs for the United Kingdom. But there's also a big caveat here. This deal would also eventually give Northern Ireland lawmakers the chance to decide on whether they stay so closely aligned with the EU in the future. And thirdly, while the UK would leave the EU, it would still continue to apply EU rules until the end of next year. And so this is being seen as a transition period meant to soften the split, especially since this deal doesn't really look to the future relationship between the UK and the EU. And so that transition period is meant to give them time to work out a trade deal, among other things. And it could also be extended by up to 2 years if both sides agree that they need more time. So this part of the deal is actually similar to May's agreement, but unlike May's deal, this deal is non-binding, meaning that the EU has the ability to change its mind. Now, all that said, the all-important question is, of course, will this deal pass? Parliament's expected to vote on the deal on Saturday, and if it does pass, the UK could actually meet that end-of-the-month deadline. But, like all things Brexit, it's not going to be that easy. Right, a few things. The removal of the Irish backstop is expected to be a sticking point for a lot of pro-Brexit conservative MPs, but you still have a lot of MPs from other parties already saying that they'll refuse to back the deal. You had Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn saying, "From what we know, it seems the Prime Minister has negotiated an even worse deal than Theresa May's." Though, of note, some Labour MPs have expressed support of the deal. We've also seen the Liberal Democrats say that they're opposed to the deal. Also, Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage said that he's not voting for the deal, even referring to this new deal as Boris Johnson putting lipstick on a pig. And if that was already not enough, you have the Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland opposing the deal. And this could really be a make or break moment because they are a key ally for Johnson. And specifically here, they're not at all happy that there might be a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. And they said in a statement, "These proposals are not, in our view, beneficial to the economic well-being of Northern Ireland, and they undermine the integrity of the Union." Though the deal has been well received outside of Britain. The President of the European Commission, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel, and France's President Emmanuel Macron all calling the deal fair. You also have the Prime Minister of Ireland saying that it solves the issue with Northern Ireland.
And also creates a unique solution for Northern Ireland, recognising the unique history and geography of Northern Ireland, one which ensures that there is no hard border between North and South.
But ultimately right now we're looking at two main possible outcomes. If the deal does pass, the deal will need to be approved by the EU leaders in the European Parliament to bind them to the agreement, or it fails and Johnson may be forced to ask the EU for an extension until the end of January. And though there's been a lot of talk about whether he would actually do that, as Secretary for Johnson has now said that he will comply with the law. But yeah, ultimately that's where we are with this story. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops. And of course, while I love everyone's opinion on this topic, and please give them, I'm especially interested if you live in an area that is directly affected by this. What are your thoughts on this new deal? What do you think will happen? What do you hope will happen? It has been an interesting one to watch for sure. And that's where we're going to end today's show. And hey, if you like diving into the news with me, let me know. Just tap that like button. Also, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe and tap that bell to turn on notifications. Also, if you're not 100% filled in, you can watch that brand new podcast with Mia Khalifa or our brand new Rogue Rocket Deep Dive by clicking either of those right there. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you next time.